The smell of smoke woke me before the dawn. It wasn't the soft, comforting scent of a wood stove or a campfire. It was bitter, acrid, and filled with panic. I stumbled out of bed, threw on my robe, and rushed to the window. My old red corn barn, now the heart of my late father's farm, was engulfed in flames. For a moment, I froze. That barn had stood for nearly 80 years. It held not only the harvest of this season but also memories, the smell of hay, the laughter of my brothers, and my father's voice echoing against the tin roof. But now, it was a column of fire. By the time the fire department arrived, there was little left to save. The blaze had devoured everything: the tools, the corn, even the tractor my father rebuilt with his own hands. I stood there, barefoot in the dirt, watching the last of my family's legacy turn to ash. And as I stared into that smoldering ruin, I noticed her standing across the road with her arms folded, a smug look on her face. Karen, the head of the local home. She had been on my case since the day I moved back to the farm, complaining about unsightly barns, unregistered vehicles, and non-compliant fencing. I thought she was just another busybody trying to control the neighborhood. But when I saw that look in her eyes, that flicker of satisfaction, I knew she had something to do with this. The police said it was under investigation, but I knew that meant it could take months, maybe years, before anyone was held accountable. And Karen, she didn't even try to hide her arrogance. 2 days later, she sent me an email titled HOA Standards reminder saying, "Perhaps now you'll rebuild something more appropriate for the community aesthetic." My blood boiled. I wanted to lash out, to expose her immediately. But I've learned something in my life: power doesn't always show itself with noise. It moves in silence. It waits. Because what Karen didn't know, a broken bar, was who I really was. To her, I was just a quiet middle-aged woman who lived alone on a worn piece of farmland. What she didn't realize was that before I retired to this property, I spent 25 years on the federal bench. I was Judge Eleanor Wren, one of the most respected and, yes, feared judges in the federal circuit. I'd sentenced cartel leaders, corporate embezzlers, and even a few politicians. And I knew exactly how justice worked, and how to make it move. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started documenting everything: every email, every complaint, every word that came from her mouth. I talked to neighbors quietly, people she had bullied into repainting their fences or removing their sheds. Turns out, Karen's whole leadership was a cover for control and intimidation. A week later, I got the report from the fire marshal. Accelerant, gasoline. The fire was deliberate, and that was all I needed. I contacted one of my old colleagues, a prosecutor I trusted. We set things in motion quietly. No drama, no shouting match across the fence, just evidence, procedure, and justice. While the case was being built, I kept my head down. Karen grew bolder. She even had the nerve to walk up my driveway one afternoon, clipboard in hand, and said, "You really should clear the debris. It's lowering property values." I looked her in the eye and smiled. "Don't worry, Karen, it'll be cleaned up soon, and so will this neighborhood." She laughed, thinking it was just another jab. She had no idea. 3 weeks later, the knock came. It wasn't on my door, it was on hers. Federal investigators, accompanied by local police, they questioned her for hours. Turns out, surveillance footage from a nearby gas station had caught her purchasing several cans of gasoline the night before the fire. Worse, the whole funds she controlled had been tampered with. She had been embezzling money for years. When they put her in handcuffs, half the neighborhood came out to watch. The woman who once strutted around giving orders now looked small, pale, and terrified. She caught sight of me standing on my porch, arms folded, and in that moment she knew. The look on her face said it all. She realized who I was. In court, I didn't preside, of course not, but I attended every hearing. I sat quietly in the back, watching as her lies unraveled one by one. The prosecutor presented evidence with the same precision I'd used for decades. Every email, every document, every act of intimidation exposed under the harsh light of truth. When the verdict came, she was convicted on multiple counts: arson, fraud, and criminal harassment. She cried, begged for leniency, claimed it was a misunderstanding. But there's something poetic about justice. The same system she mocked, The same laws she thought she could twist were now her undoing. After the trial, several neighbors came to see me. They thanked me, not just for standing up to her, but for restoring peace. The HOA was disbanded, and the community finally breathed freely again. I rebuilt the barn not the same way, but better, stronger. I painted it the same deep red my father loved and carved a small plaque near the door that read, "Justice may sleep, but she never dies." Sometimes, when I walk through the fields at sunset, I can almost hear my father's voice again. I think he'd be proud that I fought for what's right, not with anger or revenge, but with wisdom and law. You see, in life, there are people like Karen everywhere, those who mistake kindness for weakness, who think authority gives them the right to destroy others. But real strength isn't about shouting the loudest or winning every argument. It's about standing firm in silence until truth speaks for itself. When Karen burned my barn, she thought she destroyed me, but she only lit the fire that revealed her own darkness. So if you ever face someone trying to break your peace, remember this: you don't need to match their cruelty. You only need to stand tall, gather your truth, and let justice do what it is best. Rise from the ashes. And sometime as a broken bar, the people who think they're untouchable forget that karma has a courtroom too.